All right, I think we can we can get going now. So thank you everyone again for joining the webinar. We'll be covering the new features of 4.2. I'll go over them in this presentation, and we won't watch any of the videos. But what we'll do is we'll do a live demo of the features towards the end. So getting into it, this is if anyone wants this this presentation, just let us know and we can send it over to you. It has all the videos in there and everything, so you can translate it into your local languages and put it on your own websites, or also feel free to contact us if you want to do a webinar in your local language as well in cooperation with us. We'd be more than happy to do that. First couple of things about the release. There's a lot of that went in behind the scenes of the release. There's a lot of improvements and fixes and things like that that may not be as fancy sounding, but it's gone into making the platform a lot better as a whole. So some of the more kind of obvious features that we put into here, you can see listed. We've done PTZ redesign of the controls due to the market feedback on our kind of target style. People wanted the traditional PTZ style. We'll run through these in each of the slides. So you can see all the new desktop and server features here. So as I said, we've removed the aim. You have the option between the two in your local settings. I will show you. It changes the functionality of the way that it works, so a bit more of a traditional functionality for PTZ control. So we'll get into that into a live demo shortly. IntelQuick Sync. Some of you might have seen we kind of released this in a patch prior to 4.2 for testing. And now it's been fully kind of fixed for all devices. So now you can actually do IntelQuick Sync video decoding. What that is basically there's inside of Intel chips. So you'll only get it with Intel chips, and it is not supported on Xeon from my understanding. It's predominantly the Intel I, so the Core I series. They have a dedicated video decoding core inside of the actual chip itself. So what that is, it's only used for video decoding or transcoding. So it's not actually utilized by any of the other processors on a computer. So what it means is you'll find that your CPU usage is reduced dramatically by having the Intel QuickSync hardware decoding on, because it's basically sending a lot of that grunt or that power that's required to the dedicated core that's not being used for anything else at the time. So as I said, it only works with Intel. Predominantly, it's built into the Core I. It's on any Intel chip that was from the Sandy Bridge architecture and above. So that came out in around 2011 or 2012. So long as your computer is newer than that and has, like I said, the Sandy Bridge chipset, then you will have the ability to do the Intel QuickSync hardware decoding of the video. So it just means that your client will be able to basically view a lot more HD video, or even view a lot more streams in general if you're trying to look at 64 streams in one go. This is the only one we'll actually watch the video for, just so you can see the impact, because it's hard to replicate without having all the tools and everything on. So I'll mute that sound. So you can see here, if I just skip through it. So at the moment, hardware decoding is not on. You can see the CPU usage is pretty high on the right-hand side there with the blue line. Once hardware decoding gets turned on in a second, turns it on in a second, you'll see that this CPU line on the right-hand side here will drop dramatically, because this is the CPU of that client that's viewing those 6 streams on the left-hand side. So in a short while, he'll turn on. So there you go. So there's the quick sync's been turned on, so no extra hardwares or anything like that. No streams have changed or anything. Just by turning on that Intel QuickSync, you can see there the drop in the CPU usage, right? So that's a good 30%, 20 to 30% saving on your CPU. So it just makes the whole system a lot smoother. It means you can view a lot more HD video. It means you can view a lot more video in general. And your system will be a lot less glitchy or anything if you're trying to use kind of low spec hardware. So pretty cool feature, and hopefully we'll be expanding kind of the hardware decoding later down the line in future versions. Fisheye dewarping. So fisheye dewarping is a complex one. It's one of my personal favorite features of our software. There's a lot of cameras obviously coming out, and they all use different lens types. So when you're using a fisheye lens, there's a different way of calculating the mapping onto a fisheye lens. So the actual way that the lens kind of reconstructs the image that it sees. So they're equisolid, equidistant, and stereographic. At the moment, we just based it off of the camera that we first started doing our testing with, which was probably equisolid. But effectively what it means is you'll get, for some of the camera brands that are using, for instance, equidistant lenses versus equisolid lenses, and you may have seen that with some Hikvision cameras, for instance, the dewarping doesn't work quite as well as with other cameras, and that's just due to the fact that it uses a different lens type. And if anyone's curious what it means, effectively is equisolid will try and keep angle relationships, equidistant tries to keep angle distance, and then stereographic is where it basically tries to keep the pixel area size on screen the same. So basically everything has a different use case depending on what you want to use it for. For security, you can actually use any of them because we're not using it for like mathematical calculations. But the idea is that if you use a different lens, it does change the way that it's mapped. So this will actually drastically improve any fisheye camera calibrations that you guys are doing, especially if it's from different camera manufacturers, or even if someone's just putting a fisheye lens on top of the camera and they just changed it manually. It means that we can pretty much now calibrate any fisheye that's out there, as these are the main three lens types that are used, not just in security, but in photography and scientific matters as well for fisheye lenses. This is the big one, and this is the one that's taken the most work. We've been putting a lot of effort into in-camera analytics support. Some of you may have seen from like 3.2 a few years ago, where we included all the camera events inside of our rules engine. For those of you that have been following us quite closely, you'll know that we now have the whole metadata panel and the objects panel on the right-hand side. What it means now is we are trying to bring in all that data into our objects panel as well. So it's that next level of integration. And then on top of that, as you'll have seen in the last release, we had the ROI. And ROI is where we can actually set all the settings for the camera from inside of our software. So the region of interest settings, like the line crossing, the perimeter detection, all those settings can be set from inside of our software. I've got a good demo to show you of this later so you understand exactly what we mean. But this is kind of what most of our effort for this release has been put into, is making sure that all the major brands are supported. So you can see at the moment there's Bosch, Dahua, Hikvision, Provision, Vivotech. We're also working on Axis. We're doing more Vivotech. We've got other things in the pipeline like Uniview, Milesight, those kind of companies. We're putting a lot of effort at the moment, and we've now got dedicated engineering team to increasing these integrations. But this has been a big focus for this release because it's important, because with all the AI that's now coming out in cameras, it would be stupid to ignore it, right? There's the fact a lot of you guys will know that we can run on Raspberry Pis, we can run on really lightweight hardware in terms of, we can do 128 cameras on a single core of a Core i3 processor on the server side. So let's keep that as light as possible. Let's not try and add a bunch of AI onto the server side, which is going to increase your hardware usage. It's going to increase your licensing. It's going to basically increase your total cost of ownership. Instead, you've got all this really good AI inside of the cameras. You've got line crossing, you've got person detection, you've got face recognition in some cameras now. You've got human detection, all this kind of AI. So if we now can tap into all of that off of a really low cost system, you can have basically an intelligent system that's running all this advanced VCA on the camera, push back to our system that's running on lightweight hardware. And it lowers your total cost of ownership. It means that your whole system is going to be a lot more stable, because you're not trying to run AI for, say, 100 cameras on a single unit. You're spreading the load. You're doing edge computing, right? So it's been a big focus for this release. And I'll show you, I've got a good Vivotech demo to show you at the end, so you can get a better idea of how all that kind of fits together and works. New cloud features. So obviously cloud and VSaaS models and everything is quite big in the industry at the moment. IPVM are reporting on them quite a lot. And as a move to always stay obviously on top of the trend or current with trends within network optics, we've started building out our cloud login. So there's a few advantages now that we've got. You can actually now start managing cameras in the cloud. So before, obviously, we could just view the cameras. Now we can actually manage them. We can set the motion detection areas. We can set the recording information. We can change the frame rates and things, all from inside the cloud. And we're working more towards adding more and more features into the cloud, because it's becoming more and more of a requirement for the industry is to have cloud managed systems rather than just having locally managed systems. So this is kind of our first iteration or first step into building more functionality into the cloud in terms of being able to control and set up the system. For those of you that remember the 4.1 release, we had the information section in the cloud where you can now view all any errors or any bugs or anything on the system. So obviously the next logical step is once you found a bug on the system, you don't want to have to go log into the system. So now you can go to the settings inside the cloud and try and play around with some settings and remove the bug without even having to open up the NX Witness client. So kind of moving into that kind of cloud management side of things. So same with servers, you can start renaming servers, you can restart the server from the cloud now. So if someone's having issues, you can actually reboot the server to see if that fixes issues. You know, as the IT sector always likes to say, you've got to try turn it on and turn it off again, or turn it off and turn it on again, sorry, to fix it. And you can change the port from there as well. So any kind of some minute network changes to if you've got port conflicts can all be done via the cloud. Managing licenses via the cloud as well, which obviously is quite an important one. A lot of people like to add licenses and remove licenses and things like that. So that's all done by the cloud. But also you can look up your licenses and see the hardware ID, see the amount of cameras, see if it's a times license, see if it's a permanent license, and you can get all that information. So if you're working with our support team or working with your local distributor for support and they ask you for license information, again, it's a lot easier just to, through the cloud, jump on it. Or if you give them brief cloud access to your system, they can see your license information to be able to kind of help you on a support level as well, even better. User management, obviously we've always had the cloud user management, for those of you that might think that we've always had this, but now you can actually add local users via the cloud as well. So before you could only use a cloud, you could only add a cloud user via the cloud, but now you can add a local user. So you can come onto here, add a user. They won't be able to access it via the cloud, but if they're locally on site, they can access it via the IP address of the system. So it's just, like I said, it's the first iteration of building out all these kind of functionalities into the cloud. So it's a lot more friendly for management. And moving towards that kind of like cloud VSaaS kind of solution in terms of management of the system. Cool. So that's the main features. Then there's a few notable improvements. Obviously, this list could go on forever if we added every single improvement and every single thing that we did for the 4.2 release. But so this is just a snapshot. One of the ones I'll draw, well, a couple of them that I'll draw attention to. That I've worked on a few projects is audio from all devices on a layout. So if you're doing anything requiring audio, you may have known in the past, you had to click the stream that you wanted to hear the audio from, and you can only hear one stream at a time. We've worked in some prison cells and things like that where this was an issue where they wanted to be able to hear the audio streams from multiple cameras at a single time. So this has now been added as a feature. So you can actually, if you've got 4 cameras out and they've all got audio streams, you can play all the 4 audio streams back at you. So for things like I said, like we had them in police interrogation rooms and things like that, where they had multiple microphones hooked into the camera mic ports and then all coming back synced. So everything will be time synced with RTSP, with the video and the voice, and then it's good for case referencing. So that's a pretty good feature that was added. Another one is the embedded browser now saves credentials. So for any of you that have used our browser a lot will know the frustration of having to retype your username and password quite a few times into the embedded browser when you're logging into access control systems or to third-party systems. The system now remembers them, so you don't have to. You can just log straight in, and it sounds like a small one, but for those people that were using the web interface quite a lot, that's quite a good feature add. And then you can see a few of the other ones. Windows Media Player friendliness. So before our AVI codec wouldn't play on Windows Media Player, it now does. For those of you that still use Windows Media Player. And a few other kind of improvements that come from market requirements. For instance, the camera name and time overlay on the export and the camera name on the snapshot were both requirements out of France, as it's a requirement to have the camera name on any exported video from a system, especially in government or police sector. So we got that put in pretty quickly for some projects we were working on. So just remember, for anyone that's working on projects that needs these small little improvements that are like absolute requirements for projects, like for instance, those ones are absolute for the French systems to work in government. You have to have the name on the export. You just have to get in touch with your local NX salesperson and they can work with you to see how to get that in, because those improvements that are law or requirement for a region, we want to get them done. We understand that that's not like a desired feature, that's a necessity. So you just have to let us know and we'll work with you to get them put into a feature or in an improvement in the future. Cool, so that's kind of the main things from the release. As I said, we'll do a quick run through of what that looks like. So the first one we covered was the PTZ. So if I just grab the PTZ camera, if I have one on here, I'll just grab out this PTZ. So from those of you that remember, we have the hash, right? Like it's kind of like a target style aimer that we kind of drag. So now if that's not very good for the customer, if they don't want that kind of overlay, if you come up to your local settings, you go to look and feel, and you can see here show aim overlay for PTZ cameras. We can uncheck that and hit apply, and then now the aim's gone and we've now got that cross hash, right? The first time you actually do this, it will take you through a little on-screen walkthrough of how to use it and the new controls for it. So you can see now I can drag. If I click and drag, it will move the camera. It says moving in the bottom left-hand corner. Got a bit of latency at the moment. And if I pull down, you can see that. So that's kind of the new controls. You can also now use your arrow keys. So if I hold down my left arrow key, it will move it to the left. If I push up on the arrow key, it will move it up. So it gives you keyboard control for it. And then if you hold down the shift key, you still have your advanced PTZ controls for advanced PTZ functionality. So like I said, this was a requirement based off of a few people that wanted traditional style PTZ controls. Oh, and to zoom in, sorry, I should have mentioned, to zoom in, you can use your scroll wheel as well. So you just use scroll in like you're trying to zoom in, and it will zoom you in. So the new PTZ controls are available to just by going through the local settings. I'm just going to put mine back, as I actually prefer mine to not have I like the overlay, but I understand the need nod for it. So quick sync, you saw the video, just so you can see how to turn it on. Local settings, then go to advanced, and then you've got use hardware decoding here. I don't know why mine was off, but so now it will start doing the hardware decoding as you saw in the video. Fisheye settings, let's clear this. We can bring out.
James, on that quick sync, right? There's a question that pop up, not that we're on this topic. So Joey asked if the quick sync is something that we use only on the client, or does it's something that is used also on the server?
It's only used on the client. We don't have a huge need for it on the server because we don't do a lot of transcoding on the server. So when cameras come in, when camera streams come into the system, we're not actually transcoding them, right? We save them down in H.264 format or H.265 format as MKV files, and then when we play them, we send them back out in H.264 or H.265 format as an RTSP stream. So there's no actual transcoding going on there. The only time that we transcode on the server is if someone calls for a like a web-based stream, like an MP4 or a WebM stream, and it's not very common because we have HLS, and HLS is a stream format that is supported in pretty much all browsers and mobile devices now, and HLS also streams in H.264. So there's not really a huge requirement for us to do it on the server side. So it's just at the moment it's mainly for the user experience on the client side to decode the video. You just have to think where most of the video decoding is happening, and we don't do a lot of decoding on our servers, which is why it's really lightweight. Let me know if that answers your question. If not, just feel free to send another question, and Oscar will let me know. So fisheye camera, that's what was it. So you can see here, we actually based our fisheye dewarping on this camera. So this is a really old, like 10-year-old Acti camera. So this one actually is the angles and everything are pretty perfect on it. But I'll show you kind of what it means. So if you come to fisheye now, you now have the lens projection. We've also got these kind of lines that kind of gives you an idea of how that lens projection is calculated. So if I change the stereograph, you can see now everything's squashed and it feels a lot flatter. And then Equisolid is the opposite of that. Everything's kind of a lot more stretched. And you can see the way that the lines are affected is you can see how that lens calibration changes. So yeah, it's you don't obviously need to get into the details. You don't even need to really look up what kind of lens you have. The main thing is you set it on what you think looks the best for you. And as you can see, you can do it side by side. So I can change all these settings without actually losing the video stream. So I can basically see exactly what supports it best. So for this one, auto calibrate, and yeah, you can see that's too squashed. So equidescent is the best one for that. It just means that we've extended the support, so we pretty much can make any fisheye camera look really good now. Whereas before, like I said, there was a lot of brands that had a different lens type, and they still looked good. They just looked a little bit off. So now that's kind of fixed. So the next one I'll show you is the cloud side of things. And I'll leave the Vivotech camera till the very end. So if we log into our cloud account now, which may take a second because I opened in Internet Explorer.
While it's opening, James, another question came up for the in-camera analytics. So Johan asked, is there support for the AccuSense human vehicle classification? The AccuSense is from Hikvision, right?
Yes. So with Hikvision, I had this conversation yesterday. We've only done the thermal cameras at the moment. We want to do the main, like the AccuSense cameras or like the deep stream cameras and stuff. But it's in the queue, but we're also struggling with the API a little bit. It sends the information differently to how the other devices do. So we've just got to figure out the best way to do it. But it's definitely in the roadmap to add it in. And we're currently in the process of ordering some Hikvision cameras so we can start the testing and start developing it. Unless you know any different, Oscar.
Right. No, so I think the answer would be, so for Johan and anybody who's wondering which camera model and which analytics, you can write to us with the specific camera model and so on. I think the Hikvision cameras has different APIs on some of them. I believe ISAPI is supported, but not all of them. So the best way to verify if a specific model and specific analytics it will be working. We'll just email us, and if we have the model, we will test it, or we'll find a way to test it, and then that's the most accurate answer we can give you. All right?
Yeah. Cool. So you can see here on in my cloud, here's that information tab I was mentioning that we saw in 4.3 release, where it shows you all errors and everything on the system. Now from our settings tab, we can see we can rename our system. We can change some of the system settings. We can change the security levels of the system. We can check all the licensing. We can activate license keys from here as well. So you don't even have to open up the client to attach a new license key. Same with the cameras. So you can see we've got snapshots of the cameras. We've got some of the basic settings of the cameras. Change the frame rates, change the recording. And obviously, as I said, this is our first iteration, right? So this will be built out with the more clouds being used and the more kind of the requirements that come up for these kind of cloud-based systems. So that's your system, and then your users, we've discussed. The difference now being that you can actually add local users, and then we have our servers. So you can actually just reboot the server and change the port at the moment. But you can at least see the local IP address and what operating system it's running and what version of NX is on it. So we've started adding all that kind of capability of kind of a web-based client almost to be able to do everything from the cloud system, from one portal. So I can just, if I'm adding a license for someone here, and then I want to add a license for someone else, I just click here. I've got access to all my systems, and I can just, click on, just because Guillaume's on the line, I'm going to click on his test system, and I can add another license to his system here if I wanted to pretty quickly. So it gives a lot more kind of accessibility into kind of adding licenses and changing settings and stuff. And as I said, this will be building out more and more as our web team grows as well, to add in more of these features. Cool. So what I'll do now is I will show you the camera stuff. So we have this VivaTech camera. I'm going to do this all live. So let's see if it works. So at the moment, you can see that if I go to our objects tab, and my connection is starting to get choppy. If I go to type, I can actually come down. We've got VivaTech plugin. I can search for faces, humans, missing object, unattended objects. So that's all the metadata that's coming through. You can see it's starting to pick up some humans down on the street. Obviously, this isn't the best angle, right? It's what floor is our office in, Oscar? Like 7th floor?
It's on the 10th.
10th floor, yeah. So right, so what is it, like 3 meters of floor? So we're like 30 meters up, trying to look down at the street. So it's not the greatest view, but it gives us it will allow me to show you how this works. So if I now right-click the camera and I go to camera settings, I can go to plugins, and you can see here I've got my VivaTech plugin, and it has all the in-camera AI that's available to me. So I can do my general settings. So sensitivity, we've put all the way up at 10 because it's quite high. It's currently at, someone's been messing around with these settings. Let's put it at 30 meters then, assuming that it's 10 meters a thing. So we can set all these, we can set exclusion regions and everything from inside of here. And then what I can do is that we can actually set the AI settings. So if let's just do line crossing, right? So I can come here, I can create a line, I can call it crosswalk. I can click and it will give me a snapshot of the video. It will give me a snapshot of the video. There we go. And now I can put a line on this crosswalk, right? So I can see it. I want to see anytime people are walking across it. So I can change the color of that line. I'm going to make a line just here. I can choose the direction, which way it is, one way, two way, whatever. And I can change the color to however I want it to be. So if I set that, so that line's now set up, that's all done. So that line as a rule is now set up inside of the system. So then the next step is we want to add that rule. So we go to the NX rules engine. I can come down to analytic event. I can choose the camera, and then I can say I want the line crossing. So now anytime a line crossing event, what I want to do, let's show a desktop notification, and we'll apply that. And now, assuming it goes well, and when we wait for the crosswalk to change, when people start walking across the street, the analytics should obviously pick them up, and it should detect that there's a line crossing, and we'll see it go off on our notifications tab. I think after this, they should walk across the street, but it depends on if our camera sensitivity is high enough to pick up the people walking across. Hopefully it will be. But if it's not, you still get the idea of how I haven't had to leave the NX software. I don't have to try and fiddle around with how the VivoTech camera software works. I've managed to put a line, put it as two-way, set it up as an alert inside of NX without even having to leave the system. So it's making kind of use of that extended capability inside of the cameras without even for some reason it's not picking up people at the moment. I don't think I should have changed the height without even having to feel like it's two separate systems. So now inside of my system, I feel like I have all that VivoTech functionality as if it was just built into the software. So and then obviously based on when this line is crossed, we can set up a whole bunch of functionality if we wanted to, send a push notification, launch full screen, or whatever it may be. I'm just going to change that sensitivity back again because I think it's stopped it working. Let's put it back to 20. This is not picking up any people. Anyway, so that's kind of the main releases, the main features that are in this release, the main improvements. If anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask. Obviously on the call, I forgot to mention at the beginning, sorry, I've got Oscar with me, who's predominantly in charge of EMEA, in charge of the Middle East for EMEA. We've got Sergey on the call, who handles Eastern Europe, and myself, who handles Western Central Europe. So I don't know if you guys want to say anything. Oscar, you've already asked the questions. Sergey is quite quiet most of the time. But if anyone wants to reach out to any of us, just let us know. Drop a comment and we can send you out the correct email address for which one of us to get in touch with. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions. Oscar, I'll let you take over for a second while I see if I can get this AI working.
All right, so there's some questions on the panel, James. So one question, can this be done via web browser, the analytics settings?
So not at the moment, as in through those cloud settings that we were just showing, not yet. Obviously, if you want to use the camera's web browser, you can set the cameras, the functions inside of the camera's web browser. But if you were talking about the NX kind of web client, not at the moment. That's still, considering we've just built this feature in the last version, we're still working on building all that functionality into the web interface. So hopefully it will come, but there's no timeline on when all the features and functions can be set from the web interface.
All right. Silvio, our friend Silvio asked, do we have a VivoTech camera right now that we can show a book my search for license plate?
We're actually just doing we're finalizing the integration with the VivoTech LPR. I don't have a camera on this system with it, but I have seen it and it looks good.
Right. Silvio has a bunch of VivoTech cameras, but yeah, we don't have it here. But I think
it's currently being finalized. What was it? It's the VivoTech LPR and there's another LPR that we're working on. Oh, the Hikvision LPR, because they changed theirs, I think. I think are both being worked on at the moment. And from my understanding, the VivoTech one should be out for release soon.
All right, another question from Guillaume. Do we have plans for supporting NVIDIA GPU in addition to the Intel QuickSync?
So yeah, I would hope that we do, as we've now started doing the Intel QuickSync. Hopefully it's a good sign that we're going to start supporting some other hardware decoding devices. That being said, because we already have to do a lot of work directly for Intel chips, it makes logical sense that we use every part of the Intel chip. I would have to confirm if we're going to start doing GPU specific hardware decoding. It's something that our team have stayed away from in the past purely because of every GPU has a different SDK, and then it varies from release to release. And the resource into kind of GPU hardware decoding is quite resource heavy in terms of the dev team.
And there's also James, that a lot of the customers do put AI together with the NX, and they allow the AI to make use of the GPU. We're not so resource intensive, right? We're very light, so sometimes it's better planned just to leave that and that GPU resources for the AI too. But we'll check on that, Guillaume. We will check on that. See what's on the roadmap on that. The same question from Jay. It says, the cloud features, can that be done via web browser?
Yeah, the cloud features are all done via web browser. So if you're not logged into the cloud and you just go to the local web client, you have the same features. Obviously, we use the self-signed certificate.
There's some. Right. While you're opening that, some tips comes from Steve and Silvio on setting up that that AI. He says the height on that setting you were doing, that's in CM. That's not in meters. And then and this is use 30 or 25.
Okay. Okay, 1 second. Oh yeah, I did have that before. Okay, 1 second. So yeah, the oh no, apparently not. I thought you could. So no, sorry, the settings, everything are only available via the cloud. I thought I saw that you could do it, but only the health monitoring. So yeah, the settings section isn't actually available via the local browser. It's only available via the cloud browser, the cloud interface. I'll find out if we're planning on putting it inside of this local interface as well, and let you guys know. Let me change this setting. Yeah.
You ready for next question?
Yep.
Yeah, so Guillaume says, can we activate a confidence rate on object search to avoid false alarm?
Can we activate it? Say that again?
Can we activate a confidence rate or sensitivity rate on object search to avoid false alarms, so it's not overly sensitive?
Okay, I assume when you say object search, you mean the smart motion search?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we obviously don't have our own object search as in an actual object. But for smart motion search, you can, because you can set the sensitivity of the actual motion itself, right? So technically, if it's a false alarm for a smart motion search, it's also a false alarm for just general motion, right? So you wouldn't want it in your general motion. You wouldn't want it in your object search. If you don't want it in your object search, you also don't want it being triggered by your general motion. So you can actually change the sensitivity of your motion here. So at the moment, it's a 5 overall. So let's say it's actually pretty good at the moment, except for that tree, right? That tree is setting it off all the time. So we don't want that coming up. So I'm going to move the sensitivity of that area down to a 1, so the tree's not sending it off anymore. Although that tree's kind of really moving in the wind. But you get the idea. So we can set these that stop moving, so that now the tree's not actually setting off as much. It is a little bit. And we can set these sensitivities as many as we want. So that's a 2. We can do a 9 inside of it. So we can set these completely custom. So once you've tuned your motion zones, when you're doing your smart motion search, you also shouldn't find any of the false kind of results, because you don't want it in your motion. You either, like, it's if it's a false motion for the search, then it's also, you don't want the tree constantly setting off your recording. So so yeah, that's how we would do that.
Right.
Any other questions?
There's another question from Guillaume. I'm not sure if I'm getting it right, but I'm just going to read it as it is. Cloud monitoring is great, but what is missing is alert setting by email on it. Any improvement to come, because it's not easy to handle on NX settings.
Yeah, so there is a plan in the future to have cloud monitoring services. It's kind of what we're building out. So more monitoring kind of services in the cloud, so it can alert you. But it's setting up the email server can be a little bit complex. But once that's set up, it's quite easy to set up the email notification, or you can use push notification, and it will send you a push notification if there's any errors on the site inside of NX. But yeah, it's in the pipeline. It's not scheduled. It's an idea at the moment, but it is a plan to have that kind of monitoring capabilities inside the cloud. So it's kind of like you've got an IT professional staring at your system all the time, but it's all cloud based.
Is the support of WebRTC planned anytime soon? That's another question from Jacqueline.
WebRTC?
Correct.
In what terms? As in us being able to play in a WebRTC environment? Because we can do that via HLS. What exact, or WebRTC to play inside of NX via our web interface, or what's the? Can you clarify the question a bit, please?
All right, we'll wait for Jacqueline to clarify it.
So I think I've just killed this camera. It was working. It was picking up the people when I first showed it. I think. The 20 meters. Yep.
All right. Yeah, you have to put 3,000 cm, so it's 3 meters. So
that would be 300 meters.
Yeah, that would be 30 meters. Sorry, you have to put like 3,000 cm.
I had it set up yesterday, but someone messed around with it. All right, let's do 20 meters.
All right, that will be 20. Right, I think we.
Does anyone else have any questions? Sergey, do you want to say anything? You're just staying hidden and quiet the whole time.
Yeah, you did a good presentation, James. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone who joined. And please feel free to contact us for individuals demo and ask questions. We usually find the right time to answer all your questions and help you.
Sergey, are you planning on? Sorry, just real quick, Sergey, are you planning on doing a 4.2 webinar in Russian at all, just for anyone that might want to listen to one in Russian language, or Ukraine?
I plan one in English for Eastern Europe and in Russian as well. Yeah.
Okay. So if anyone is interested in a Russian language one, then look out for that. That'll be posted via our social media, and Sergey will be leading that one with Jason, I assume. So yeah, any other questions come through?
Right, before we go, so the last two questions that we have, the clarification on the web RTC. So Jacqueline types, right now NX streams HLS, but will it be possible to stream web RTC?
I'll have to check. Usually we do everything in HLS because it's a lot more lightweight, and it pushes the grunt to the web browser versus like doing it in our backend, like we were discussing before with the hardware decoding. But I'll have to check if we're going to plan on supporting that, because we can support motion JPEG and WebM and things like that for embedding into HTML. But I'll double check and see if we have any plans around WebRTC. Do you have a specific? It might be good to email us, and if you have a specific use case for it or specific need for it, then we can actually figure out what the kind of advantages of adding WebRTC support will be.
All right, and there's a last question by Jay. Does the new PTZ work with on-VIF cameras? That's an easy one.
Yes. Yeah. It works with all cameras. Any camera that we support the normal PTZ with will work with the new PTZ. Obviously, the smart PTZ functionality that you saw there, where we can draw a box and it will automatically zoom to that box. Just to show you, just to confirm, that functionality has to be coded and has to be supported by the camera. So this functionality where we can just draw a box like this and it zooms down to that area without having to actually manually move it, that's called smart PTZ or advanced PTZ. And to be able to do that, it's a nice shot of some clothing. To be able to do that, it has to support absolute positioning or absolute move, and it has to be supported in the correct way. We've had a few issues lately with different manufacturers that support it, but their positioning is inverted or doesn't work properly. But if the camera supports it well, then we can, if you reach out to us, we can normally get them kind of supported in a week or two. So it's just based on, every camera is done differently. You can't just do it once and it works for every camera. You have to physically do every camera, because anything like lens changes, firmware changes, motor changes, all of it affects how this works. So you just have to let us know. Reach out to us via the community or reach out to your local salesperson, and we can arrange getting that tested and then getting it put into the system if the camera supports it properly. That's a big if, because there's a lot of cameras that claim to support it, and there's a lot of issues with the functionality. We've had that quite a lot lately, where axes have been inverted, not axis, the camera brand, as in the axes of the camera have been inverted, and or they kind of skip the decimal points and they only jump between whole numbers, so you can't actually do intricate movements and things. So it's very dependent on how the camera's implemented their absolute move. Actually, axis is one of our easiest ones to support. They have really good absolute move positioning. So yeah, depends on what you're talking about. For the controls, any camera that we have PTZ support with can automatically use both controls. For the smart PTZ functionality, just reach out to us and we'll confirm your camera has that functionality, and we'll check that we can actually do it. But we are trying to work with different camera brands to get those done. We're currently in the process, as we have been for a while, of getting a whole bunch of UniView cameras in with Guillaume, who was asking a few questions today for the French market.
All right, and I think a couple more questions popped up. What is the highest resolution tested and supported by NX?
The highest resolution tested? What did we? I don't remember. I mean, I've done 20 megapixel. I do think we've done higher, but because didn't you have one in Taiwan that was like 100 meg or something like that?
Yeah, so I think I don't think we have a real limitation, right? In the software itself, right? It goes down to on the server that you have. But then then until we test it. But Silvio, if you have any camera you have in mind, and you want to test it, either we can send you. Well, you have a bunch of licenses. You can test it, or you can send it to us. We can test it. And but my general notion is that we could support any megapixel, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would all be down to how at that point, if you're talking 60, 100 megapixel cameras, the main throttle would be trying to decode it on your local computer. It will be a lot of data to code, so you'd have to you just have to make sure you have a very good client machine to decode a 100 megapixel stream, for instance. So yeah, that's pretty much the only limitation.
Right, and then you have a bunch of people sending regards. John, WSM, thank you, Steve, and so on. And then guys, so we are through the questions, and I'm sure there's more questions. And we're about to close the session at 1 hour, just so we are always on time. Reach out to me and Sergey and James for the questions you might have, and I'll reply to you on the email, or we'll get back to you on the phone or on the Skype. And anything else to add, James?
No. Thanks everyone for joining. And like Oscar said, if you've got any questions, just feel free to reach out to your local contact. We're all pretty happy to help, so just let us know.
All right, great presentation, James. So if you guys want to listen to the Spanish one, tomorrow we have the same presentation with a more handsome presenter. So I'll do it in Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be as good.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. Have a good day, everybody. And for the questions that were not answered, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, thank you guys.